know me. Take the time today.
Hello, how are you? And today's video is called Tags, Easy Punch Style Using Printables. Now I showed you this particular punch, I think in the last video, I'm not 100% sure, but it's a 2-inch wide punch that'll put this pattern in the top of a 2-inch wide strip or a 5 centimeter piece. And you can do short ones, you can do any length that you want, and once that goes in there it just punches down and decorates the top for you. So we're going to use this punch to do this. So we'll need, it doesn't matter if you haven't got a punch, just use or hand cut whatever shape you want to make the top of your punch. You could use it a tag shape and just cut the corners off, like say if it was like that, and just go ahead and cut your corners off so that you've made a tag. It will look really good no matter which way, and then you can put a hole there. So it's quite versatile. So I'll show you the first one I'm going to make. I'm using a printable. That's why I called the video the tags being an easy punch style using a punch, and the printables. If you haven't heard of Nick the booksmith, you must be laying under a rock, because she is very well known in the junk journaling circle. She's got a good design eye. She does beautiful work. So I've used her page. So this is a page actually. So if you could fold that in half, it's meant to be a page. But what I've done is I've printed it out on this double-sided matte paper. It's 178 GSM and it's a nice matte finish. So it's not shiny. It takes the distress ink quite well and it prints beautiful. So that's how I get this nice vivid colour. You could use any cardstock that's suitable for a tag. So I printed that out here, and I'm going to use this and I'm going to use this and make tags out of it. And then the leftover piece here, I'm going to make a pocket. Now it's sort of, it is meant to be a white piece of paper, but if I showed you a white piece of paper beside it, all whites are not white. So that's white and that's white, but it's sort of an off-white. So it's perfect for what I'm doing, because I'm going to ink up and make it look a bit more vintagey. So enough chatting about the starting. I know you'd like to get straight into it. So we'll do this one first because it's going to be my long tag. So we'll cut this out. I'm just going to cut straight down here on a 2-inch piece. The quilting rule is good for this because I can put the 2-inch mark there and I've got a 2-inch tag. I'm not cutting this one first because it will shorten my tag. I want to make sure this one's long enough for what I want to do. So I've got to go this way because I want to come 2 inches out here. And I'm going to use that as a square. So I'm going to cut all the way down the whole length of the page. Now this is an A4 sheet. If you're in the US or wherever you use letter size, you will get, and I think it's 8.5 inch wide by 11. So this is a little longer than your 11 inch, but it won't matter. You'll still be able to do this. You'll still be able to get a long tag because the finished tag is 8.5 inches. So it'll still work out for you. So I'm going to then turn that, I'll put that aside and we'll cut this one. So this one here, I want to be 2 inches. So again, I'm going to work out my 2 inches on here. So I've got 1 and 2. So I'm just going to come to the side of the flower and the side of the bee. So I know that it's square, by using my square lines here. This is why these type of rulers are quite good. They're clear and they've got all the lines pre-marked for you. I'm just going to figure out where I want that cut line and cut that piece off. Turn it around and mark my 2 inches again. Actually 1, 2, just double checking. And cut that piece off as well. So there are my the start of my 2 tags, and I've got this piece left to make a pocket. I've got a template here for my pocket because I know that's going to fit in there once I glue those pieces down into my book. This size tag fits into this pocket quite well. So we can cut that out. And this, you'd only do this if you want your pocket to match. You don't really need to make it out of this same paper. And do that there. So I can make this pocket now match. Okay, we can move him out of the road because I don't need this here now until I colour it. If you want it a bit heavier, you could always glue another piece to it to make it a bit heftier. I'm going to leave that. That's the length I'm going to leave this tag at. So we can pop that straight into the punch. And there's the head of my tag already. And once I distress ink the edge of that, that tag's done, finished. And you could always stamp something on the back, some lines or something, or glue another piece on it for journaling. I keep this piece here. I've done this piece first so I can keep this piece here because I'm going to use this to create this tag. So I'm just going to keep that there as a template. And you could probably keep that bit too. I'll show you why. And this one here, I'm going to just use my guide, one that I made earlier. Now I want it to be this long, and I know that this tag punch cuts off a tiny bit of the tag. So if you want it to be a particular length, just take note that you'll lose about 1/8 of an inch at the top. So I'll just shorten it by that much. And I'm going to use this little bumblebee here at the bottom of the page, and I'll square that one off. And I'm not going to punch the top of this yet. I'm going to punch 2 pieces using this little bee. So now I'm going to put this cut piece over here. I want to use the bee as part, I want it to be here inside, just sitting about there inside the top part of the tab. So I want him sitting there, but I also know that if I do put him there, that I don't want him to get cut off by that little piece there. So do you see what I mean? So he's hiding under there, so I want to make sure that he doesn't get cut by that line or that line. So I know that he's in a good position there. You just do a very light trace here. I'm using a very light touch to my pencil and just seeing that this is where I need to put it. Now I've also made the allowance here because I know that that's going to get cut off. I can trim that to my 2-inch mark. So I know my first one is right there. I better cross-check that. And I'll square that off, turn it around and square it again. Now that's got to be the same width as that because I'm going to cut the 2 pieces together. So I'm going to pop them in there. I'm going to slide it up, holding those 2 pieces down because this short piece is going to disappear into the punch. And I want to push it all the way in And if it doesn't go all the way in, I'm going to use a tool to make sure it's square. You can see there I'm pushing that piece in and make sure it's square into the punch. And punch down. And it will come back out. And there's my little bee placed perfectly where it should be. Right, now the next step is I'm going to rip this to be a bit shorter so it'll rip across there so we can see the little quote, and I'm going to rip it to be a nice little shape where I know that it's going to miss the quote. And see how I've started off low there and I've ripped up a bit higher, and it just adds a little bit of interest, as well as I miss covering up the text there. So that one's ready to colour. Once I've done the edges with the distress ink, I'll then glue this piece down. This is deliberately a long tag because you might want to use it to stick out the top. So you might have your pocket here at the bottom of the page and you want it to stick out here at the top. If you don't want it that long, all you do is shorten it like this one here and you have it in your page and you just have a shorter one. All right, so let's colour these two and I'll show you a simple technique for distress inking. I'm going to start to use the distress ink in two colours. So we'll start with this one first. I'm using the Vintage Photo. I've got an older, nearly empty ink pad and a newer one. So I'm going to use the older one for a lighter colour. I'm just going to start by feathering out on the edges. Now I'm going to use my blender and I'm just going to give it a light pass over from the edges of the tag into the centre. It'll fade off into the centre. And what this will do, it'll give it a subtle colour change and it won't be so white. Now this explanation is for the beginners. So if you're experienced, I know you already know this stuff. So that's a nice and simple tag to make. Now here's how I used it. I put it in my book with a tea-stained page, and over the top of that page I've used Nick the Booksmith's glassine paper technique. You'll see that. I'll tell you a bit more about that later on in this video. It's nice and transparent, so when you put the tag in there it looks really good. Now over the top of that I've got the vellum page and it's also got a print on the top, so it all looks really good together. So you can see how a simple tag, sometimes when you put it with so many other things, it just works. Now I'll make the longer one, and this one is the two-piece one with the little rip on the edge. You just do the same, just distress ink all the way around your edges. So if you want this darker, just use an ink pad that's got a lot more ink in it. I've deliberately used this lighter colour. I've blended the background of the tag as well, and this one I've made a lot darker, just so you can see the difference between the two. And I'll glue this second rip piece down on top. When you put that in place, just make sure it's like right in line with the back tag piece. And then it sort of looks like one. There it is popping out the top of the page. And there it is in the darker colours and the lighter colours. And that's the same colour ink. It's just that I've applied it darker. Now we'll do the other one. This is the second page. I'm going to cut it out the same way though. And this one here, I'll cut that long strip off first, just so I can get the longer tag. and it'll have the quote on it, which adds a lot more interest, and the shorter tag here, but I'm going to cut off some of this plant just at the side here. And the B I'll get from the bottom of the page here. So just get that leftover piece of the top of the tag. That's the wrong way. That's better. And I'm going to, trace around it like I did on the first tag. If you don't have a printer and you don't have these printables or any printables, don't worry. All you need is a piece of cardstock, whatever colour you like. Fussy cut some of your flowers out. I've got a couple here. These ones were just off I don't know if that's, I think it's a 12 by 12 sheet. This was my mum's. I thought it might have been wrapping paper, but I think it's a 12 by 12 sheet. And that looks so pretty on this cardstock. It's got a bit of a linen weave on it. So I'm going to make a 2-inch strip and just use that. And this one here is also, it's just like a collage paper, this one. It's also off a 12 by 12 and it's just scraps. Just got this out of the scrap bucket. So I've fussy cut that one as well. So I'll go ahead and make those and I'll show you how easy it is to do, even if you don't have the printables. Just do some fussy cutting or use some stickers. You can get the same result. And, and it'll still match with whatever journal you're going to put it in. So let's get to it and make those up. I'm using Victoria Velvet. It's a pretty musky pink, which will go with that. I'll colour around the edges and a little bit down on the bottom corner, a bit at the top. And now I'll glue the flowers down. I'm using the art glitter glue because it's got a lovely fine tip on it. And I'll just place that where it looks the best. And that's them two finished. This one and this one look entirely different. The Victoria Rose really suits this one and the Vintage Photo suits this one. I used the same colour to do the number stamp, and these are really cheap, rubber stamps. I didn't even take any care in how I placed them. I just stamped them down the side. That's a good thing about junk journaling. You can just be that little bit careless. This one here I done in the honey colours. I wanted to give that a different look, so I used more of the tea-dyed distress ink. This one being a lighter. So you see, just by changing the colour of the distress ink, you'll get a different look. And here's the pocket that I said would look good using that flower off the side of the page there. So if you put the tag with the quote at the top of it in that and just made it a bit shorter, that suited it really well. And here's the one that I done using the same cardstock, and I coloured the background quite dark. So that's it here. I just used about 2 or 3 different colours here. I got it really orangey, a pumpkin-y colour in the middle, and blended it back out to the sides. And then I put Nick the Booksmith's glassine technique over the top. So this is the printable kit that I used, Ode to the Bee, throughout the whole video tutorial here. The same page, but this time I printed it onto the transfer paper and used the glassine technique that Nick the Booksmith has invented. So once you've printed it out, you need a tracing paper that actually can take ink. Once that's printed out, you just spray it with the ultra clear. Nick used the semi-gloss. I couldn't find any here in Australia, so satin's very close to the semi-gloss. So I used that. And it really, really does give you that glassine look, and it's quite transparent. Don't forget, if you haven't got any printables, just make up your own. Do a bit of fussy cutting and use up the plain cardstock that you've got in your stash. Print out a quote or type it up on your typewriter and just glue it down on your tag. Rip a piece off the top. If you haven't got a punch to do the top of the tag here, just cut one out. I'd like to take the opportunity to invite you to join my Facebook group. It's a brand new group. I'm going to be posting as often as I can between videos, lots of different ideas that I come up with. I am a daily crafter, so as soon as I come up with an idea, I'll share it with you all. I look forward to seeing you inside the group. I hope the ideas that I've showed you today inspire you to pull out a few of your kits that are pages and use them a little bit differently, just so you get to use up what you've got, you know, in other ways than just using them as pages. I'm Donna. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.